It's Friday, and we've got a host of things to talk about today. Just so you guys know, we plan these classes in advance. Sometimes it doesn't seem like it, but we do. Okay, so I said last night we're going to talk about foreclosure contracts today. Not that they're prevalent in the market, but you're going to see more and more. And I want to make sure, actually, one of our agents requested that we talk about it. She said she's getting Zillow leads and the people are asking about foreclosures. So I want to teach you the good, the bad, and the ugly of foreclosures. Because it seems like a really good, my best deal ever. I'm going to get a foreclosure. I'm going to get it really cheap, right? Market forces are in play, and it's called supply and demand. And in a market like this, everything gets bid up. So it's not necessarily a good deal. And Otis and I are going to use some scary stories. If you don't mind, Otis, I'm going to go through a couple little things that just were questions that people asked me that I just kind of figure that if somebody has a question, then other people would have it too. We had a closing a couple weeks ago, and literally a couple weeks ago, and the buyer's agent sent over a walkthrough release form for our seller to sign, which is kind of a moot point because the closing already occurred. So it's just one of those things. A lot of brokers are very, very picky and hold agents' checks until they turn in all their files, right? And this broker wants that file. So, do you want to fight or do you want to be a friendly agent? I said it's really a moot point at this time. It helped the agent out. All they're trying to do is paper their file. So it really is important. And the way we've set up .loop for you guys, you really can't submit for review until everything's in. And we've chosen not to nitpick you on a bunch of forms that would be nice. It would be nice to have a walkthrough form completed, signed off by the buyer that they did their final walkthrough and accept the property as is. But it's also duplicative because once they sign the closing documents, they've accepted the property as it is. So we could have another form if you want me to add that to it, but I've decided not to do that to y'all. And there's a lot of senseless forms out there, so we try not to do that. So that's just one thing I wanted to put out there. But a lot of brokers do require it, and help these agents figure it out if you can. Just be friendly. This is a big one. It's not relevant to most of you, but as time goes on, if you set up a PA or an LLC or S Corp under the real estate commission, you can't get creative. It can't be Otis, the bad dog LLC, right? You can't get creative with your name. It's your name LLC. It's your name Inc. It's your name PA. That's the way the real estate commission wants it because you have a duty to the public for them to know who you are. Otis, the dog LLC, it doesn't relate to real estate. And you also can't use a term like real estate in your name because Otis Bass Real Estate might lead them to believe you're a broker and you're not a broker. So it's all about disclosing properly to the public. So that's why we do that. And quite a few people do it. It's not illegal for us to pay you. It's just improper for Chapter 475. And this one you and I talked about last night. So we have a duty when you're dealing with the public and you have reason to believe that they are not of sound mind, you have to disclose it, right? One of the managers asked me the other day, we have an agent who's working with somebody, they really think they have dementia. Is it a HIPAA violation if we tell the title company that we think this is a mentally disabled person? And I'm not 100% sure on this, but it makes sense from all my years. You have an obligation to tell, right? Because you don't want the sale to go through and then get backed up by a court because they say they weren't competent to pass title, right? So better safe than sorry. When in doubt, what do we say, Otis? When in doubt?
Throw it out. No, tell them. Disclose it.
Disclose it. Disclose it. Yes, good answer, John. Had an issue. This is how I'll say it, batshit crazy people can be. This is the market you're in. So I get a call. Hi, Mr. Beggins. This is what's my name. I had a problem with one of your agents. I'd like to talk to you about it. This is, I hate those calls, first of all, because I don't know the agent. I don't know the property. I don't know the severity. I can't tell anything from the tone of the message. So I call her back and Long story short, they sold their house they bought for 500 grand in DC for 900 grand. And they felt pressure to buy buy a house here. And she was a real estate agent in DC, right? She hooks up with a real estate agent down here, and they're putting offers on houses and they can't get them. So they go crazy and they find one of our listings that was advertised, and this is a problem, as a 5-bedroom, 3-bath house. But it's really a 5-bedroom, 2.5-bath house. So this woman from DC, who was a realtor, has a realtor here, comes in 80,000 over asking price to get this house. Sight unseen, waives inspection periods, and gets the contract, right? But they don't really care because they sold their house for 900 grand in DC, so they paid an extra 80 grand. Well, it turns out it didn't appraise by 80 grand. So she was pissed by that, right? But there's nothing we can do. She made the offer. She's got to live with it. She should have known, being an agent herself. And then they never looked at it. They didn't do a home inspection. They didn't fly in to look at it. They just literally bought it sight unseen. And she called me pissed off because it only has 2.5 bathrooms and we advertised it as 3. So I'm not saying we're not right? We should have advertised it as a 5, 2.5, but maybe it imported from tax records that way. I don't know how it happened, but we do have a duty to review our MLS to make sure it's right. Because I was embarrassed by that. The rest was nanny boo-boo, dumbass. Why didn't you at least hire a home inspector? Or I would rather, even if I don't have a contingency on a home inspector, I'd rather have the home inspected and walk away from my deposit than close on a house that I don't want. So this is the example. People take no personal responsibility for the decisions. It's 100% her fault. She bought it sight unseen. She overpaid. It didn't appraise, but they were rich with this tax-free cash money from their sale in DC, and that's what's driving prices here. The buyer's agent didn't even look at the house. Good point, Kim. Virtual tour. The buyer's agent could have walked through the house and sent up a FaceTime video or a Google Duo video or a Zoom call video from their phone, walk her through the house and showing it to them. There could have been a whole bunch of things done, which, just reminding you, this is serious business we're playing with. And there's nothing she can do. She can't sue. It's not going to make any sense, but it put a bad taste. And she said, I'll just let you know that I'll never recommend your company to anybody. Well, why don't you be mad at your own buyer's agent, you dumbass? You know, they were supposed to be protecting you. But that's it. Otis, you gave me a story about public sewage versus septic. Why don't you tell that story? Because I think it's just something that's relevant. We have to have these things at the top of our mind. Mm-hmm. Because if we don't hear it, it's awareness, right?
Yeah.
Awareness gives you flexibility. Flexibility gives you options. Options give you power. So we want you to be aware of some things that can happen because they do. So tell your story.
So I had an agent that was representing an investor, and they bought a home in Thanota-Sassa. MLS says that public water, public sewage, so on and so forth. And in Thanota-Sassa, you generally get public water, but you don't see a lot of public sewage out there. And so the investor buys the home. and by the way, the investor got an inspection on the home as well, moves forward with the purchase, excuse me. And then from there, once he actually has the house, he starts to basically do some fixing up on it and so forth. And he realizes, hey, this is not public sewage. There's a septic tank here. And upon further discovery, he found that the septic tank was underneath a driveway. So one of the owners, as I understand it, wasn't the previous owner, but the one before that, paved an extension on the driveway over the septic tank. So it wasn't easily or readily available to be found. So he calls his attorney, and they draft up a lawsuit, and they named everyone in the lawsuit because that's what they do. And to basically, bring this to the court, and he wanted to sue for 10 grand because that would be the cost to take out the septic tank, put a new one in, and so forth. So he's out 10 grand. And in the end, the seller disclosures said don't know as far as septic tank, public sewage, and all that. So the seller did a good job of keeping themselves arm's length, but the listing agent was the one that really, it was called neglect. because that listing agent put in there without verifying that it was public sewage. And by doing so, that was misinformation, and that led to the purchase of the home. So he ended up getting sued, and E&O insurance paid for it, but it was the neglect on the listing agent's part because he put public sewage. And so this is where we got to really do a little bit more due diligence with some of our listings. And I know that personally, if I'm not sure about it, I just pick up the phone and I make a call. And so, but in the end, it was a lot of sleepless nights for my agent and the other agent, and it was all that was very preventable stuff. And so when you put whatever you put on MLS, it is a reflection on you and the brokerage to be accurate. And if you're not accurate, that's a risk, and then it's liability that we take on that's completely unnecessary if you just really go one step farther and verify certain things that you put on there.
Yep. Slow down and double check.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happens. I've got 6 lawsuits on my desk right now, and it's an incredible waste of time. Our agents have to go through, they're subpoenaing text messages, they're subpoenaing emails. So there's just little things I want you to be aware of. Start being diligent. Use text messaging sparsely for contract negotiations. Use emails and title your emails that are with relevant subject lines so you can find them again, because it just makes it a lot easier. Some of our agents are having a really hard time finding these things. Because that's what happens. When the lawsuit comes, the E&O company gets involved and they write a denial letter first. And then that doesn't work. So they hit us with a lawsuit. And then they hit us with affidavits, and we got to answer all these questions. And then they question us on our questions, and they depose us. And then they force us to mediation. I got 3 mediations coming up. And they're doing the mediations by Zoom now, which is a hell of a lot easier for me. Because it used to be to drive to a county courthouse and it just sucked. So at least I get to mediate by Zoom. And I'm going to go out to mediation and offer nothing because we didn't do anything wrong. But our E&O company's attorney is going to offer something, because it's rolling the dice. When you go to court, if you lose, you got to pay the damages, and most times you got to pay the other side's legal fees. So they'll settle a case just to avoid the risk of going to trial. And that's what happens. So that's why they name the brokerages, because they know we have insurance and they know that we'll basically settle and they'll at least get some cash out of the deal. And it's really a crappy legal system. And I hate watching it happen. Chris wrote, one of our buyers who closed in January just talked to the neighbor, and apparently the county or city notified all the homes on that road that they will be widening the road from 2 to 4 lanes. Seller never disclosed. Neighbor says the seller knew for certain. Uh-oh. Yeah, that's how it happens, guys. You run to them. Oh yeah, they've had problems with that septic tank for years. How do you know that? Because Roto-Rooter's been out here 6 or 7 times.
Yeah.
And then they'll look at the seller's disclosure statement, and all of a sudden you've got Johnson versus Davis exposed.
Yeah.
That was the seller's duty to disclose. Mike says, what if the county tax people have it showing 3.2 when it's actually a 4.3? And 2-car garage and it's 3. Go by facts.
Yeah.
I make this joke, and it's really not classy at all. But the people that work for the county are just inputting data, and they make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? All the time, sometimes in your favor. I mean, my house, it says it's 34. I built this house. I'm pretty sure it's 3,100 square feet. But the county says it's 3,400 square feet, so I'm going with it. The appraiser can measure it himself if he wants to. So,
well, and real quick, Craig, I saw something on square footage there, and I had a listing one time where the back porch was enclosed, and they even ran in some air conditioning and so forth. So it actually became truly heated square feet, but they never notified the county. They did it way back in the early 90s. It was a little bit different back then. And so they had been paying for years with 1,600 square feet versus 2,000 square feet. In the end, when we listed it, I told them, like, look, the public record says this. For us to really comp it out and push the value where it needs to be, we need to be truthful with what our square footage is. And they're like, well, what do we do? I was like, this is a pretty easy thing, actually. You got to let the county know that you did basically an addition on the home. It is square footage. You're going to have to pull a permit. They're going to come out, inspect it to clear the permit, and now you're good to go. And a lot of times this actually,
if the work was done properly.
correct. Yeah,
If not,
absolutely.
they kind of make you rip it out, and that really pisses people off.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the work was done properly on this one. And in the end, it would actually help them out because they would have had to deal with the fact that it was not disclosed properly. And then you're looking at trying to hide it when it's obviously right there in front of you. By doing it the way we did it, it cost them a couple $100, but it also brought thousands of dollars in value.
Mhm.
And so it was the right thing to do. But and we need to guide them sometimes. We need to guide our sellers because they don't know situations like that. Sometimes they may have bought it with the garage enclosed, and now you got yourself a situation where there was no permit and the garage was enclosed. I've seen those scenarios when I sold bank-owned homes. And so we either A, have to reconvert the garage back to a garage, or B, we have to go through the permit process, or C, we have to do a hold harmless and disclose the fact that we know it's a converted garage when we took it over, but it's not showing in public records, and the buyer has to take on that responsibility of making it right. But something has to happen there.
Yeah, and Otis, you're so calm about talking about this, and that's the way you should be. It's a matter of fact. You either put it right, take it out, or disclose it. That's it. Those are your three options. You don't ignore it. Ignoring it's the worst thing you can do. But let me give you, not you, but let me give the group a background on that. So when I build a patio, I generally, it's less expensive, right? I'm building the house for $200 a foot. The patio is not $200 a foot, but I'm not putting electrical outlets in the walls. I'm generally not running water through the walls. I'm generally not insulating the roof of the patio, right? So that space is less expensive. So when you try to sell the 1,600 square foot house as a 2,000 square foot house, 400 of that square feet is not $200 a square foot space, right? And just because I close it in with some walls and some windows, it doesn't make it the same dollar per square foot. So oftentimes I'll take a room like that, and let's say the house is $150 a foot, I might give them $30 a foot for the space of the garage, right? Or whatever they closed in. So it's an extra 400 square feet. So that's an extra $12,000. And that's really all it costs to close in the room. So you can't say it's worth, it's $460,000. It's worth 12. So you can get around that a little bit. There are lots of chats going on today. Well, best way to find out if a property is on septic or not is to ask the sellers how much their water bill is. If it's low, they're on septic. That's how I learned about my own home that was built in 1981. Good point, because your water bill is made up of incoming water and sewer, right? That's like when you fill your pool, your water bill is going to be very, very high because you're paying for the sewer too. Now, a lot of times you can call the city and say, hey, I'm going to be filling my pool this month, and they won't charge you for the export part. Something you could talk about. Tax structures could be wrong. Yes. Disclosing realtor remarks in MLS. Yeah, a little bit of diligence, right? Just ask the sellers these questions. Here's their seller's disclosure statement. You really need to review it with them and clarify. They say unknown. Say, is it really unknown? Or could we find out? It's just going to avoid prior proper planning yields positive results. So every time your phone rings, I think your camera goes off, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who did you use to retroactivate the permit? I can only find one architect as well as I've got one, Kim. This guy is amazing too. His name's Sam Greenberg. He owns Dansco Engineering. He's here in Apollo Beach, but he works all over the state. When I found out my pool permit wasn't closed, I got him. He sent out one of his engineers. They inspected the pool. They wrote a letter saying it was standard. I paid him $750. And then I drove that letter to the county's building department, paid them $25, and they issued the permit and they closed it out. So Dansco Engineering 645-0966, 813-645-0966. Answered live.
Cool. I'm jumping on with my laptop finally.
Oh, you got it. Cool. No, I heard this now recording. Yeah, you got to disconnect the one now. We'll get sound back. John's irritation. Listing agent states it's a pool and it's an above ground Kmart pool.
Hey, Craig, can you turn my video on for me, please?
Oh, yes, it will. You're good. Yeah, and don't be tricky. I mean, photos tell the picture anyway, or they should. There you go. All right. Couple things. I'm just going to share my screen for a minute, look at a couple things. Reason number 15, agent panels. Guys, we're planning a big day. We broke 150 people so far for RSVPing, which is really cool. So if you haven't RSVP'd, please do. We want to see you all live. Learn from your peers, tips, strategies, and tools used in buyer presentations, showing, submitting offers, and navigating contracts. That's going to be a fun time. It's not just us giving you lectures. We're going to hear from real life people doing real life things, which is cool. I want to put this out for two reasons. First of all, this is Zillow giving me a market update. Market updates at mail.zillow.com. Zillow is doing this to your customers too. Yep. So there's something in Moxie called neighborhood news. So there's a couple of things we want you to do. We want you to clean up your database before you start the CRM, the Moxie Engage. Then we want to drill down your database to all your past clients and meaningful customers. And then we want you to launch them on campaigns, because if you're not doing it, Zillow's doing it. And it's just there. So look at this. Typical value 1 year ago, $335,000. Typical home value this year, $451,000. Guys, this is not normal. I'll tell you, I was coaching last night. I always say this, but March's numbers aren't in yet, but it's close. And we're just over 200 sales. So we'll probably end up 220, 225 sales for March of this year. What do you think sales were for March of last year? More or less?
More.
331. So we're probably going to hit 225 versus 331 last year. But 331 last year produced $3.2 million in open business, and 225 this year will pretty much do close to 2.8 million. So 100 less sales and $200,000 in less commission. So we're almost making it up with volume. That's not a good sign, right? It is slowing down. So you're starting to miss out on the opportunities because, for whatever reason, because there's so much new competition partially, and there's not much inventory. All right. So Moxie has a neighborhood news section, which is pretty cool. Jeff and I, go ahead.
Well, you mentioned we need to take control of our database, because Zillow's obviously going to do it one way or another, and they're going to intercept our database if we're not doing it.
They've already got your database.
Yeah.
They know more about your customer's house than you do.
Yeah. And if anyone needs to figure out, like if you've been doing this for a while and you may forget some of the people that you did business with because you get really busy, go to Remine, and at the bottom, it will track everything you've ever put into MLS. So that way you can always refer back to it.
Jeff and I had a recruiting presentation this week, and the girl did $1.5 million in GCI last year. About 60 transactions, average sales price about $800,000. And she works for an independent real estate company. And she has done nothing to brand herself with her past clients at all. She's just a dynamo. She's been doing it for 5 years, made $1.5 million last year, guys. That's a lot of money. And I showed her, Jimmy was great, because I was having lunch. I texted him and said, hey, dude, can you send me a buyer presentation? And I showed her this just to give you guys some basics, because I think we take it for granted. Of course, we just got back from 121, which is a reminder of all the support we have behind us. But having lunch with this woman who's making $1.5 million a year, and when she saw this, she was like, oh my God, right? She is spending $27,000 a month on Zillow leads. $27,000 a month, rounded up to 30. That's $360,000 on Zillow leads, right? And I showed her this, and I talked about our Zillow team and how I told her about recording a video to text the customer once you get the connection from Zillow, to build that relationship. Because when you're spending $27,000 a month, you don't want to miss one, right? And you want to be impressive. So I said, this is what we do. We hit them with a video that says, I really enjoyed talking with you. I'm looking forward to helping you find your perfect home, blah, 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 blah. And finish off with your name and phone number, right? And then I said, you hit them with an email like this. And I said, we built it for you, right? So this is all done. This is our standard buyer presentation without a video. Now this is Jimmy, but yours can be built with your page. And then all this other stuff, Angelique and Jimmy put in there for you. It's just relevant to make you stand out, right? And this is getting important now, because this is one of my deviations from our thing. This dollar sign, I want to talk to you about this separately. I mean, on this class, this $1 MLS co-op fee or $0 MLS co-op fee, you're going to have to start talking about these relationships. So this is our handshake agreement. And this would be a nice place to put in maybe a showing agreement, which I talked about at sales meeting on Tuesday. And this is a nice time to play the single agency card, right? Talk about the loyalty, obedience, confidentiality, full disclosure. This is, no other agent is doing this with a lead when they first get it. And I'm showing you guys every week how many leads we're getting. You're seeing it's 300, 350 leads a week. What if we were actually treating these leads like they were going to be a customer in the future, which deviates me again. I had an agent complaining that they're getting leads, but they're not ready yet. Hello, that's what salespeople do, is they follow. Did you ever inquire? How many people did I interview for my roof on my house? 4. I had 4 different companies come out to give me estimates on my roof. How many of them followed up with me? Was I a buyer? Yeah, 100%. Right? I did the interviews. I knew who I was going to go with because I just want to keep them honest, because I couldn't believe the price and the time frame, but they all came back with a very similar price and a very similar time frame, right? But follow-up is it. If you're cherry picking, expecting the slam bam, thank you, ma'ams, you're missing opportunities. You got to take these people, put them in your database, and nurture them until they're ready, right? It's not just, oh, they're not ready yet, I'm not going to deal with them. No, they're going to buy in the future. You got to be the guy staying in touch with them, which is why I'm really impressed with these CRMs coming out and these marketing tools to make us stand out and make them want to deal with us. So this is just cool. It's relevant to the buyer if it's relevant to the buyer. If it's not, it was an email. It didn't cost anything to send, right? It's just an educational piece. Talk about home inspections, talk about all this type of stuff. And if you don't like this, then strip the pages out and send a shorter one. Or if you want to add something more personal, create a page in Moxie and add it to it. But these are just good ideas to talk about, and it's a reminder. So I just want to put that out there. But we're going to get to the contracts. But let me get your opinion, because you work with buyers in the marketplace and I don't. Are you seeing, it's not frequent, obviously, but are you seeing 0 MLS fees or $1 MLS fees?
Yeah, it's out there. There's a lot of discount brokerages that are taking place. There's a lot of business plans that are really trying to undercut the basic model that we have now. And you also, with discount fees, you get discount representation. And then that's where we also find that we, as the agents, we get involved in a situation like that. We're holding everything together on both sides.
Right. So my recommendation from Friday was under Florida Interactive Forms in .loop, type in search showing. There's a showing agreement. And basically it says, hey, look, I'm going to show you homes in these areas. I'm going to ask the seller to pay me a commission, but if for some reason the seller doesn't pay me a commission, you're going to back me up. And it's tough to have those discussions. It's not comfortable, but it's really not comfortable getting a $1 commission, because I can't even afford to write the check.
Yeah. And having that conversation isn't an easy conversation, but it needs to be had with the buyer, because at the end of the day, they're getting the $1 MLS fee is just to get the exposure. And a lot of agents they don't have the gusto or the experience yet to say, hey, listen, yeah, just because it's an MLS doesn't mean, it's a great deal, first and foremost. Secondly, they're not paying anyone on this. They're getting the exposure from MLS, but they're not paying anyone on this. And so that's a tough conversation to have, because let's go take a look at the home, but I still have to represent you and I still need to get paid. You know,
Right.
you don't go to the dentist and say, well, I just want this tooth right here. That's it. You know, everything has to be done. And so you pay the full price.
No, this story is going to be more relevant for a normal market.
Mhm.
But what's the difference if this pen right here, Stellar MLS pen, it's worth $2, right?
Okay.
So if you bid $2 on it, you can have this pen. But what if and I'm going to pay a commission to my sales guy for 50 cents, right? So what if I went to the seller? The seller's offering no commission. But if I sell the pen for $2.50, will you pay me my 50-cent commission? Right? So we're trading dollars.
Yeah.
So seller's netting the same amount of money, right? At $2 versus $2.50. $2, he's not paying a commission. I'm sorry. At $2.50, he is paying a commission, but he's still getting $2 in his pocket. So that's what you do with the buyer, with the seller, because you're going to write into the contract, and it's legal to do this. Buyer requests that seller pay Century 21 a 3% commission. Right? Now, that's a term of the offer. The seller could cross that out, counter offer and say no. Right? In which case, I would come back and I would lower my price. I offered you $3.50, paying my agent 3%. You said no to the 3%, so I'm lowering my price. 3% of $3.50 is $10,500, so I'm lowering my price to $339.5, and I'll pay the commission. Same net to the seller either way, but it's a little slap in the face, and that's kind of how it works. Now the problem with that scenario is now your buyer has to come up with the cash, right? So you might have to, and in this market, you're paying over asking anyway. So, okay, we're at $3.50. I need you to pay the commission because my buyer doesn't have the cash. The $10,500 commission on $3.50. I'm going to offer you $360,500. Now you pay the commission, right?
Yeah.
So we can work it both ways, and that's called negotiation. But I just want you to get that in your head. You're going to start thinking that way, and it's a good practice.
You almost have to treat it like an off-market property. Where
Yeah.
you negotiate your commission into it. John Evans has a great comment. If these types of listings are limited service, can we go direct to the seller? Sometimes they're actually giving you instructions to go direct to the seller.
Yeah. It depends on what they disclose.
Yeah, it's like a for sale by owner in many cases. They're just buying the MLS advertisement.
There you go, Brian. You had to negotiate with this. It is just like that. It's like negotiate with a FSBO. Just pretend it's not even on the MLS.
Mhm.
But the showing agreement being signed protects you,
Mhm.
right? Ryan Holmes is down to a flat fee commission of $2,500 now. That just sucks. We'll remember this. Yeah, the same thing. I only one followed up. Had a conversation with a person who sold their own home, who stated he didn't need an agent to sell. However, he stated he wouldn't buy without one. Cuckoo, cuckoo. Cool. All right. See. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, we're going to go back to share screening. And Otis, you gave me some sample contracts of REOs.
Yeah, and the REO market right now is kind of wonky. There's not your typical, there's not a lot of Fannie Mae products out there. What you will see, there's a lot of Hubzu products, and there's also some auction products, which is kind of through Hubzu in many cases. You also find ResNet, res.net. And ResNet, you make the offer online, and afterwards, if it's accepted, then a contract's procured or produced from that point. And then what you'll see here, this is the Fannie Mae one, the residential real estate purchase and sale contract. It used to be an addendum, but they have since made it a sale contract. The way, and what we talked about yesterday, Craig, is every single one of these needs to be read, because there's been so many variations over the last few weeks, few months, and 2 years, that it's almost like when you're engaging a builder, those contracts need to be read because they've been changing them a lot too. So none of them are standard FARBA. They all need to be read, and they need to be interpreted as best as possible, so you know what you're getting yourself into.
So let's talk about some examples. So it's really hard to teach foreclosures as a general rule, because everybody does them differently. So a couple things off the bat. You need to right now, write down on your to-do list, go register with Hubzu.
Yeah.
So the agent who asked me the question about talking about these contracts, once you get a buyer who wants to have one, you're not prepared. So you got to go to Hubzu and register, sign up. They'll give you some training about what to do. I think ResNet has its own training too. So you need to get registered for these products as they're out there. So when you get one, you're ahead of the ball rather than behind it.
Yeah.
And then you need to read the terms. So you and I were talking about foreclosures last night. The buyer thinks they're getting a good deal because it's a foreclosure. But what goes wrong with the foreclosure? So actually, the thing I should show first is this one. This is a great example. Basically, what a foreclosure says is, I don't know crap about this house.
Yep.
I'm not taking any responsibility whatsoever for disclosing anything.
Mhm.
Whatever you find out and buy it. But once you buy it, don't ever talk to me again. And the contract is written so strongly that you can't even sue.
That's correct.
Right? It's a pig in a poke, right? And that's why typically foreclosures sell for less, or an as-is contract sells for less. But in this market with the frenzy that's going on, people don't care. So this is where we need to, as agents, really have discussions with the buyer. You need to double check and triple check all these things with professionals because we don't know. When people are getting thrown out of their homes, they stop taking care of them. And the foreclosure process takes what? A year, 2 years, 3 years. When there's a 2-year moratorium on foreclosures, people have been living there for 2 years. They're not fixing shit when it breaks. And then when they move out, they do bad things.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Some of the bad, I've seen concrete poured down the toilets. That's a problem. Because what happens to the concrete when it sits in the pipe?
It breathes, expands.
It expands and it blocks your line. And how do you fix it? You got to cut open the floor. And people do nasty things like that. So you want to be super careful. But look at this addendum here. Let's make it a little bit bigger.
And this is a HECM addendum. So this is a reverse mortgage where the homeowner passed away and there was no family members or anything to sell the house. So then it goes into a foreclosure process. And so this is very common for those. They're called a HECM, HECM.
Seller does not agree to convey property in the same condition as of the date of acceptance.
For red flag.
Red flag number one means I ain't mowing the grass. I ain't keeping the pool running. I'm taking it all to hell. I don't care what happens to it. So you're now
vandalized. It's on you.
That's right. Seller will not maintain the pool or spa. Seller does not guarantee that all debris will be removed and the property will be broom swept. This is scary stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, are you going to pay a lot for this house?
I hope not.
Hope not. Property sold as is. Seller will not provide utilities at any time. Utilities will be made available for the inspection at the buyer's expense.
And I've gone through that before. You got to actually have the electric company turn it on for a day so you can do it.
A pain in the ass. Seller does not agree to mediate or arbitrate. All the protections that you're used to having in a contract,
gone.
Throw them out the window. Property is going to be transferred by special warranty deed, not a general warranty deed. Property is sold as is at time of closing. Offer has been approved by RMS subject to the terms of this counter and execution of a contract with all required REO addendums contingent upon buyer's appraisal being equal to but not less than the offered price. If HUD requires a seller to complete an updated appraisal, and that appraisal values the property at a higher amount than the full executed purchase price, the buyer and or seller reserve the right to terminate the contract and return the full escrow. So if the price is higher than you bought it, they're going to cancel you. Wow. So this is a really good example of how to talk to a buyer if they want to buy a foreclosure and just say, look, this is what you're buying. Agents are not able to charge a processing fees on the HUD statement. Wow, that's interesting. Seller will not pay for or provide a well, termite, or septic inspection at any time. Seller will not pay for nor reimburse buyer for any home warranty. The earnest money deposit will be in the name of the seller's title company and will be deposited with the seller's title company within 48 hours of contract ratification. So what happens with an addendum?
Supersedes.
Supersedes
the contract.
It overrides everything in the contract. So anything you're used to having normal protections, you're not going to have. And a lot of buyers are just not in a position to do this. Hold on. Yeah, Mike says, be careful. There could be big HOA fees outstanding. They're
Yeah.
not paying that. And liens and back taxes. It's a mess, and most folks do not have deep pockets for it.
There was
Taking the
one-
AC, the cabinets, and the baseboards.
Oh yeah. They could gut it right beforehand. And a lot of times these companies do have someone going out and inspecting the property once a week. So they know what's going on. If they know what's going on with the contract, things coming up missing before the sale isn't uncommon.
John had the water company not want to turn on the water due an outstanding water bill. When I'm living in my house for 2 years, I'm not paying all my bills either.
Mm-hmm.
Water company, oh, you want to test the water in the house before you buy it with this type of addendum?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's $1,000 back owed water bill. Pay me that and I'll turn it on. Should be scary enough for you, right? Messages. Antithesis. Yes, it is scary. So I don't know what else we want to talk about there, Otis. I mean, that's kind of says it all.
Yeah, this really is a
read.
blueprint for any other contract that you're going to get into. What I'm seeing also out there, when we go back to Hubzu, you have an auction style approach.
Let's talk about that.
Homes, and Hubzu is a medium for the boutique foreclosure attorneys and asset managers. So they all kind of use that as between that and ResNet. And what I find there is you have to inspect the property before you even make an offer. There is no inspection period. Once you make that offer and you make your deposit, it's hard. And so you've got to know what you're getting yourself into long before you even get into it. And I find that those who are just trying to dabble in a fix and flip and they're not really sure what they're doing, they need an inspector and all that. It's not the right vehicle for them. But if you have a general contractor that knows what they're doing, they can just go walk the property and they know what they're getting themselves into. That's a little different for them. It's definitely the right contract, and it does limit the buyer pool, but at the same time, it's a lock stock contract with that escrow. And once that escrow is made, you're not going to get it back.
Right. So banks, as a rule, when they have to, it's not even banks, loan servicing companies, when they are ordered to foreclose because payments weren't made, they generally hire a law firm. And sometimes it's a big law firm, sometimes it's a boutique law firm, right? Because some servicers are big and some servicers are small. And that law firm chooses the type of foreclosure. And Hubzu is a pretty simple way because it's an auction and it generally gets sold at the day you want it. And you don't have to go through the hassle of putting it on the MLS and all that stuff. And you get a kind of a risk-free sale for the seller.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about the Hubzu process, because you got a bid, you put an offer in.
Yeah. So the auction process is great. I mean, because you're there all night. It has a clock that ticks down. There's a 15-minute window most of the time where you can put your bid in and the 15-minute clock starts winding down. And I've found in my experience that about 2 minutes before, someone comes in and bumps it up again. And so then the clock starts again. You got to get back on the horn with your buyer. And generally you want to know what their cap is. So that way you can play within that cap. And then once it exceeds the cap, you pull your chips off the table and you're out of there. I find that also when you are looking at the paperwork, it's one of those situations where the buyer pays a commission too. And so now, or there's a buyer premium. And I've seen buyer premiums at 5%. So you may get the home at 400,000, but then you have to add the additional 5% on top of that just to play ball. And that's a buyer premium in itself. And then you also have to make sure that they're paying a commission, because you may have to ask them for the commission in addition to. It's a really slippery slope. And if you don't read it, what will end up happening is it will take a lot of your time, a lot of your resources, and you're not going to make any money. It's a very difficult situation to not understand.
Brenda said, what's the limited warranty versus a general warranty deed? It's a special warranty deed. The general warranty deed, I just remember from real estate school, gives you the entire bundle of rights from the beginning of time till now. The special warranty deed says, I just warrant my time of ownership. So it's not really a problem. All foreclosures are sold that way. It's just the seller's being protective, saying, I'm not honoring anything prior to my ownership. So it could be a title, but you have title insurance anyway, so you're okay with it. So it's not, don't really worry about it. But that's the difference. Yeah, so Hubzu's, yeah, you got to know the process. So that's why you need to register. So really do put that on your to-do list. So you have the process if you get a buyer who says, I want to put a bid on this house. But, and Kim, yes, I'll share that addendum because it is a great talking point to say, here's an example of what a foreclosure property is like.
Yeah.
And it might just scare them away.
Yeah. Now, I find that ResNet is a little bit more buyer friendly for the most part, and that's res.net ResNet. And you go in with that and you actually type in what your terms are and so forth. But you also need to make sure that you have visited the property ahead of time. You know what you're getting yourself into. And most importantly, that your buyer understands the risk involved so they don't come back onto you and say, hey, you didn't tell me about this, that, or another, because all of it has a slippery slope. And Craig, I'd like to tell the real brief story that I had where a guy in California contacted me on Zillow. He wanted me to sell his house. Rarely do we get those kind of leads on Zillow, right? So I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I want to sell your house. It's in Meadow Point. So I went out there, I inspected the home. I was like, the home looks great, but the AC is not working right. And he replies back, I just had the AC installed 6 months ago. That doesn't make sense. So
I was just going to bring you up on this point because I want to make sure we close on that.
yeah, so I went out there, I met the AC guy who has a warranty on the AC. And he's like, wait a minute, man, there's holes all in the copper line on this. So I think this is contaminated, a toxic drywall situation. And sure enough, I brought it back to him. I was like, look, we think it's a toxic drywall. The guy said he'll fix the AC this time, but he's not going to do it again because it voids the warranty if there's toxic drywall. And so then my seller sends me an inspection report saying, no, look, here we got the inspection and there's no toxic drywall according to our inspection. But upon further review, I pulled out the light switch, and the copper's all black. It's corroded. I go to other spots of the home, pull out the sockets and so forth. They're black. Pull out the brand new oven that he put in there, and even all that area behind it the copper and everything was blacked out. And so what had happened in this particular home was part of the drywall was contaminated, part of it wasn't. So you have half a house with contaminated drywall.
That
So I
happened a
asked
lot
the guy,
with
did
renovation
you get
properties.
inspected? I'm sorry.
That happened a lot with renovation properties. Let's say the house
Absolutely, yeah. And this is kind of had all those signs on it, right? And he's like, yeah, this is a tough one. I bought it on Hubzu. It was an auction style property. It looked great. I bought it with no inspection or anything like that. And it was built in, I think it was built in 05, right around there, 06. And so he got stuck. He was in California, never inspected it, never did his due diligence, buys a home at a really kind of a premium at the time. And then he's got $100,000 worth of damages that he's got to gut it out. Because when you have toxic drywall, you got to not only take out the drywall, but you got to treat the studs. You got to take out the AC. You got to take out the AC ducts. It's an undertaking. And then you got to put
all the baseboards, all the drywall.
Yeah. And then you have an environmental side to it too. They have to make sure they go in there and you have, it's all sprayed down with kills. It's got to get its own clearance. And then
you be disposed of properly.
That's it. Yeah. It was a big undertaking. So this guy was really kind of trying to do what happened to him. He was just trying to offload the property. And so he ended up getting stuck with it. It was a tough situation for him. But with that said, that existed on Hubzu. Hubzu got him on a contract. He couldn't get out. He thought he got himself a great property. It turns out Hubzu, the way the language is written, they minimized any liability against themselves. He's stuck. And that's just what it was.
And he had to spend 30 or 40 grand to fix up a house that he didn't anticipate doing that on.
Yeah, he ended up taking a big haircut, and he finally disclosed that there was an issue there, and he just took a big loss on it and got rid of it.
So let's talk about Chinese drywall, just so people know what it is. It's really not an issue anymore. There was a period of time from 2002 to 2007 where the building boom was crazy and we couldn't get enough drywall. So we imported a bunch of drywall from China, Chinese drywall, defective drywall to be more politically correct. And a lot of homes were built with defective drywall, and it off-gassed the sulfur smell, and that sulfur corrodes copper, right? So this is 2022. So from 2002 to 2022, we would have figured out if it's a Chinese drywall house by now.
Absolutely.
So a lot of investors went in and did renovations, and they did just what Otis said. They stripped the houses of all the bad stuff, had all new stuff put in, and then got drywall certification done. So if you'll see a house that is disclosed, this was a Chinese drywall house, but here's a certification that it's good, it's good, right? Because you'll still see that on marketplace. There's thousands of homes that were built across the country that had defective drywall. But nowadays, we don't ask anymore. We don't even disclose it anymore. Because 2002 to 2006 was a long, long time ago. And if it did have defective drywall, it would have been known by now.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid of it. I just want you to know what it was. It was an issue if you were offer bad, canceled their contract. Hey, this was a Chinese drywall house. We're not going to buy it. We don't care if you remediated it or not. So you're good.
And Lauren's right. You have to have a hazmat inspection. You need to make sure that environmentally it passes the inspection before you can put it back on the market.
No, there's a certification that gets done, a seal of approval by an engineer that says, yes, this house has been approved. I think it was exposure to sodium, salt water got into the drywall, and that made it off gas, the sulfur. I believe that's true. And there was a lot of it. There's whole subdivisions here in Powell Beach that had it, where they just literally had to remediate all the homes.
Yeah, I saw that in quite a few in Pasco County, where next thing you know, the whole neighborhood, when I was selling bank-owned homes, the whole neighborhood's got bank-owned homes because everyone just had to walk away from their situation. They didn't have the money to pay for the remediation themselves. They're stuck, so they just bail. I mean, it's a tough situation.
Yep. But investors, John Lum did hundreds of them.
Yeah.
Came in to fix them. Okay. There are agents that have extra addendums that they have raised unnecessary questions. Are those required for buyer? I'm not requiring a defective drywall addendum anymore. It was only for homes built between 2002 and 2006. But once again, it's been known by now. It should be disclosed if it was. A lot of homes after Hurricane Katrina ended up with that product too. Yeah, it's devastating to a seller who did that. Now we covered a lot today. All right, I hope that educated you on foreclosure properties. Most importantly, your takeaway is read the contract, have a discussion with the buyer about the risks they're taking buying from a seller who has no duty to disclose and has protected themselves. They've lawyered up to make sure you can't get them.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to scare you, but I'm trying to scare you.
Yeah, at least let your buyer know what they're getting themselves into. And so that way it's not, they walk into it eyes wide open.
Yep. Lots of stuff. All right, we talked about final walkthroughs, how it's really not necessary, but it's a good protection to have. We talked about LLC naming. We talked about using your Moxie buyer presentation to make you stand out from everybody else. We talked about taking a video to follow up with your leads, and not every lead's going to buy now, but you want to put in your database and nurture them. We talk about disclosure of dementia. We talked about MLS, sight unseen problems with people that don't take personal responsibility. So you got to be careful of that. We talked about foreclosures, foreclosure contracts and addendums. We talked about sewage versus septic tanks as problems. We talked about how E&O claims are settled. We talked about Hubzu that you need to register for, and res.net. We talked about Chinese drywall. We talked about low MLS fees and how to overcompensate that. And this annoys me. Listen to this. Hello. Hello.
Hi, good morning. This is Craig.
Yes.
Hi, Craig. My name's Jennifer. I'm calling on behalf of Smart Center. I'm an agent recruiter here.
I know, Jennifer, I'm going to stop you because I've gotten 18 phone calls. I can show you the history. And I called you back and I know who you are and I asked you to opt out. So please take me off your list.
Immediately. My apologies.
Thank
Have
you.
a good day.
Bye. Literally, watch this. How do I do it? Phone, recents, here, info. You see that? This is how many phone, they call me every day, multiple times. It's an agent recruiting program. And it's always the same number and it calls me. And I finally got pissed off from it yesterday because I hate when I get these spam calls. And I get them all the time. So that's what you do. You answer it, you tell them take it off your list. And if not, we'll report them. Sorry, raises my blood pressure. All good. Q&A, last one. Regina, do you know of any insurance company that will cover a home during the selling period if the owner didn't have insurance? Most people don't want to insure a home if it's for sale because you know you're going to cancel the policy as soon as it closes.
Right.
An insurance company that will cover a home during the selling period if the owner didn't have insurance.
Hmm.
Global Home will give you a home inspection warranty.
Yeah. You might want to look at like a Lloyd's of London. They'll cover almost everything, but you're going to pay.
But they should have insurance on the house.
I agree. Especially if it's financed. If it's free and clear, I can understand them not wanting to, or self-insuring, but
Yeah, Florida Best Quote can help you with that. And they'll be at our event, I'm pretty sure. Cool. Well, Mr. Bass, I think it was an informative class this morning. Thank you for your help. You've got a wealth of knowledge of what's really going on in the active marketplace. And I think the agents all benefit from hearing that.
my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy Friday, guys. Hope you get a little break this weekend. Looks like it'll be cloudy and overcast. So good day to get the house clean.
Yeah, the inside of the house is going to be raining.
Inside of the house. All right, guys. Thanks. Happy Friday.
Have a good day.